In the early 2000s summer, I was going through the most difficult time of my life. Despite attending dozens of job interviews, I only managed to get temporary part-time jobs, ranging from cleaning to deliveries, doing every job imaginable. No matter how much I struggled, my debt kept piling up due to living expenses and student loans. One night, barely getting through those tough days, a friend called me out. He was also poor and looking for a job in a situation very similar to mine. He had somehow managed to borrow a car, and we decided to go for a ride to lift our spirits. It felt so good to be out after such a long time. As we pitied ourselves for our poor situation and discussed how we could find a good job, we drove endlessly. Eventually, we found ourselves on a remote road, devoid of any signs of life. It was a dark, desolate country road without a single streetlight. "Hey, what is that?" Out of nowhere, something appeared at the edge of the headlight's reach. As we got closer, we saw a woman holding something tightly in her arms. I couldn't help but wonder why she was out there alone in such a secluded place. That scared me. Why is she standing there? Should we check if something's wrong? We rolled down the window and asked the woman if everything was okay. "Are you okay?" Out of the blue, the woman asked us to help bury her baby. At first, we were too shocked to respond, but then we started realizing that something was really off. If a baby had died, she should contact a funeral home for a proper burial. Why was she looking for someone to bury the baby on this deserted road? Why don't you go to a police station for help?" However, the woman pleaded desperately. I thought it was best not to get involved with her, so I stepped on the gas and drove away. Glancing at her through the rearview mirror, she just stood still, motionless, gazing at us as we moved away. We continued on our way, but after going a bit further, the road gradually disappeared, replaced by a dense thicket of trees. We should turn back. After making a U-turn, we retraced our path. To our surprise, the woman was still standing in the same spot. Moved by pity, we decided to stop and rolled down the window to tell her to seek help from the police. As the window rolled down, not even halfway, she reached into the car and began to throw cash inside. She was begging us to help, tears streaming down her face. Fearing we might leave her again, she pulled out more cash. It was all $100 bills. It was too much money to refuse. I felt uneasy and reluctant at first, but the sight of the money changed our minds. We ultimately decided to help the woman. Where should we bury the baby? We followed the woman, walking quite a distance with no sign of stopping. Burying a baby in such a secluded spot? Is this really appropriate? Many thoughts crossed my mind. The woman finally stopped under a large tree and pointed to a spot beneath it. We needed to start digging, but we didn't have a shovel. We first started digging the ground with branches and stones we found nearby, and when that didn't work, we started digging with our bare hands. After all our clothes were covered in dirt, we finally made enough space to lay the baby down. We heard the mother of the baby mournful cries just as we began to recover the earth. She then placed a stack of cash on top of the baby's body and spoke, "Take this money to buy toys and candies in your afterlife and live happily." We all knew, as some believed, it was a gesture meant for the baby to use spiritually in the afterlife. We also felt sad, but at the same time, we got greedy. As we began to recover the earth, seeing so much money being buried felt somewhat wasteful, even though I knew it was wrong to think that way. The woman thanked us for helping her and said she would stay a little longer with her baby, asking us to go ahead first. "Let's go." As we took our first steps, she earnestly told us never to look back, no matter what. Remembering her words, my friend and I began to walk down the hill. As we made our way down, my friend mentioned the money buried along with the baby. You're not suggesting we go back and take the money, are you? It sounded convincing. Realistically, a dead baby wouldn't be able to make any use of that money. However, I couldn't bring myself to agree. Unable to get my approval, my friend decided to act alone and dashed off toward where the baby was buried. His footsteps gradually faded away, leaving me standing in the middle of the hill, torn between chasing after him and continuing my way down. As those frustrating moments dragged on, I heard something hitting from a distance. A chilling thought crossed my mind. Something must have happened to my friend. I quickly turned around and retraced my steps. I ran up the trail until I was breathless. There, I saw the tree and my friend, but contrary to my fears, he looked perfectly fine. He looked at me with a disgusted look and nonchalantly continued with the digging. Maybe he thought I came back to help and take my rightful share, but I had no intention of helping him or taking the money. Stop. What if that woman sees you? My friend assured me he had checked thoroughly and found no one around. No matter how much I tried to justify it, this didn't seem right. I told him to stop, but he ignored me. Worse, he even urged me to either join him digging or keep a lookout if I didn't want to participate. He then continued to frantically dig up the grave and shove money into his pockets, one by one. I felt my sanity slipping away as I watched him. I kept glancing around, in fear the woman might show up at any minute. I even flinched at the rustle of the wind. After a while, all of a sudden, my friend screamed and ran down the hill. Without a second thought, I too started running and followed him, not even knowing why. We ran and climbed into our car that we had left parked. Still panting, I asked, "Hey, what's going on?" Trembling in fear, he opened his mouth. He said the woman was watching us. There was no one else. I checked, I assured him, but his following words shocked me. He claimed the woman was on the tree above, looking down at us. I just couldn't believe it. That tree was too tall and big for her to climb by herself alone. You must be mistaken. Then suddenly, I noticed something in front of us. It was that woman, the mother of the dead baby. She began to crawl onto the hood of our car. It was so shocking that we couldn't even scream. Then, right in front of us, she started banging her head against the glass windshield, pushing her head against it, left and right, as if trying to break in. It felt like she would break the glass shield any moment and come into our car. We tried to run out of the car, but the door wouldn't open. And then, from the car audio, came the voice of the woman.
"I saw you taking the money. I saw everything."
We both lost consciousness. When we finally opened our eyes, the surroundings were eerily quiet, as if nothing had happened, with no one around except us. What happened? Was it all just a dream? Amidst the confusion, we noticed handprints smudged across the entire windshield. We tried to wipe them off from inside, but they wouldn't come off. The handprints were all on the outside. As we looked around more, we saw money scattered throughout the inside of our car. Realizing it wasn't a dream, we decided to report it to the police and headed to the local police station. The authorities remained skeptical, but eventually, we convinced them to follow us to the place where we buried the baby. There, under that big tree, as we got closer, that sound I heard last night echoed once more. As we looked to the source of the sound, we saw a woman hanging from the tree with a rope around her neck. Her head, broken and tilted, was hitting the tree with a thud as the wind blew. Now I understood why the mother wanted us to bury her baby under that tree. She wanted to be with her baby, even in death. But the questions still remain. At what point in time did the woman become a ghost? Was it when my friend saw her looking at him from the top of the tree, or we've been haunted from the very beginning of our encounter.